Every room you walk into, someone is sizing you up within seconds. Before you finish your first sentence, before you even sit down, a decision has already been made. They're deciding if you're confident or insecure, if you know what you're doing or if you're guessing, if you're worth listening to or easy to ignore. And the scary part, they're not doing this consciously. They're reacting to signals you don't even know you're giving off. Tiny shifts in posture, micro pauses before you speak, the timing of your responses. Your face, your breathing, your stillness. While most people rely on guesswork and vibes, a small group understands how first impressions actually work. They don't rush. They don't over-explain. They don't chase approval. They walk into conversations already ahead because they're reading the situation before anyone else realizes there is one. This isn't about dominance. It's not about manipulation. And it's definitely not about controlling people. It's about awareness. Seeing what's happening in real time before words distract you. Once you learn this skill, people stop surprising you. You notice hesitation before it turns into resistance. You catch confidence before it becomes influence. You recognize deception before it causes damage. You stop asking, "Why did that go wrong?" because you saw it coming from the start. And once that happens, you're never the most unaware person in the room again. If you don't want to be the only one who doesn't get it, like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs an edge. Chapter 1. The first 5 seconds, 5 seconds. That's all it takes for your brain to decide whether someone is safe, competent, confident, nervous, friendly, guarded, or unpredictable. You can pretend you don't do it, but you do. Everyone does. It's not arrogance. It's survival. Long before you had resumes, dating apps, and LinkedIn profiles, you had one job: read the room fast enough to stay alive. Now here's the shift that changes everything. Most people let those 5 seconds control them. They walk into a meeting already shrinking. They enter a conversation already performing. They see someone's expression and instantly assume rejection. They misread silence as judgment. They misread confidence as arrogance. They misread nerves as weakness. And then they live inside the wrong story. This audiobook is about taking that same 5-second instinct and training it. Not to become a human lie detector. Not to judge people like you're above them. Not to manipulate. The opposite. It's about becoming accurate, calm, and grounded in your perception so you can connect faster, communicate cleaner, and stop handing your power to assumptions. The title says read anyone in 5 seconds, but the real promise is this. You'll learn to read what matters first, and you'll learn to read yourself at the same time. Let me start with a story. A young project lead named Arjun got promoted faster than he expected. On paper, he was ready, smart, hardworking, consistent. But in the first week, he walked into a conference room and felt the air change. The senior people were already seated. One leaned back with arms crossed. Another kept typing. Someone didn't look up. In 5 seconds, Arjun's brain delivered a verdict. They don't respect me. So he did what many people do when they feel small. He over-explained. He talked faster. He added extra slides just in case. He tried to win them over with volume instead of clarity. 15 minutes in, the room wasn't disrespectful. It was bored. And boredom is brutal because it feels like judgment. After the meeting, his mentor said something simple. You didn't read them. You read your fear. That sentence is a mirror. Most misreads are not about the other person. They're about the projector inside you. If you want to read anyone quickly, you start by separating observation from interpretation. Observation is neutral. Interpretation is emotional. Observation is arms crossed. Interpretation is they hate me. Observation is short replies. Interpretation is I'm annoying. Observation is no smile. Interpretation is they're rude. Your first discipline is this. In the first 5 seconds, collect data, don't write a novel. Here, what the disciplined mind does when meeting someone new. It scans for 3 layers in order. First, baseline energy, not personality, energy. Is it high or low, fast or slow, tight or loose? People broadcast their state before they speak. A person with tight shoulders, held breath, and clipped movements is often under pressure. A person who moves fluidly and breathes low is often more at ease. This isn't a moral judgment, it's a weather report. Second, attention placement. Where are they oriented? Toward you, toward the room, toward their phone, toward the exit. Attention is a spotlight. It reveals priorities. Someone can be kind and still distracted. Someone can be intimidating and still fully present. Don't confuse attention with respect until you have more evidence. Third, congruence. Do the signals match? If someone says, I'm excited to meet you while stepping back, tightening their jaw and avoiding eye contact, the body is contradicting the mouth. Congruence doesn't mean deceit. It often means conflict. They may be shy, exhausted, or anxious. Congruence is the biggest key because it tells you whether you should take words at face value or slow down and create safety. Now most people skip all of that and jump straight to the label. He's a jerk. She's cold. They're fake. I'm not welcome. Labels feel powerful because they end uncertainty, but they also end learning. The moment you label, you stop seeing, so we train the opposite. We train curiosity with boundaries. Imagine walking into a gym for the first time. If you try to lift the heaviest weight immediately, your body will punish you. The social world is the same. If you try to read someone's soul in 5 seconds, you'll injure your judgment. But if you learn the form first, you can get strong. The form begins with your own body. Because here's the secret nobody tells you. The fastest way to read a room is to notice how your body reacts in it. Your body is an instrument. It detects tension, threat, warmth, and unpredictability. The problem is, your instrument may be out of tune from past experiences. Someone raises their voice and your stomach tightens because you grew up around yelling. Someone stays quiet and your chest compresses because silence used to mean punishment. Someone is confident and you feel irritation because confidence used to make you feel inferior. None of that is the other person, that's your history. To become accurate, you need a simple internal practice. Name your sensation without obeying it. When you meet someone and feel something, silently say tightness, heat, urge to impress, urge to withdraw, suspicion, excitement. Then ask your mind for a second option. What else could this mean? That pause is where maturity lives. Arjun used that. In the next meeting, he entered and felt the same fear. But he didn't feed it, he noticed it. He stood still for a breath. He scanned the room, one senior person leaning back, yes, but also listening, another typing but taking notes, someone not looking up but nodding at key points. The room wasn't hostile, it was busy. He adjusted. He got to the point. He asked one clear question. The room woke up. Respect followed clarity. That's the first lesson. People respond to the energy you bring more than the story you tell yourself. Now let's make this practical in a way you can use today. For the next week, you're going to train what I call the 5-second snapshot. Every time you enter a conversation, whether it's a colleague, a stranger, a client, a cashier, or a family member, take a snapshot in your mind. Not of their character, of 3 things only. What is their pace right now? Fast, medium, slow. What is their openness right now? Open posture, neutral posture, closed posture. What is their focus right now? On me, on the environment, on something internal. That's it. No deep conclusions, no diagnosis, just a snapshot. Then you do one more thing that turns this from theory into power. You test your snapshot with a small action. If they seem fast and closed, you slow down and soften your tone. If they seem slow and internal, you ask one simple, grounded question and give them time. If they seem open and present, you match with warmth and directness. Your goal is not to win. Your goal is to regulate the interaction, because reading people is not about guessing correctly. It's about responding effectively. There's another story I want you to hold. A woman named Mira worked in sales. She believed she could read people instantly, and she was proud of it. She'd say, "This one is a waste of time," before the customer even spoke. And she was often right, because she treated them like a waste of time and they left. Her intuition was actually a self-fulfilling prophecy. One day, a quiet man walked in, avoided eye contact, and spoke softly. Mira assumed he was browsing. She gave him minimal attention. He left. An hour later, her manager showed her the lead sheet. That man had been referred by a major partner and had a large budget. He wasn't uninterested. He was intimidated. That's the danger of arrogance disguised as perception. If you want to read people in 5 seconds, you must stay humble enough to be wrong. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Here, the disciplined mindset. You are not a judge, you are an observer. You don't look for reasons to dismiss. You look for the best way to connect while staying aware. This matters because your life is built on conversations. Opportunities arrive through people. Peace arrives through people. Conflict arrives through people. If you misread people, you mismanage your life. So we're going to set a standard right now. You don't get to call someone difficult until you've tried clarity. You don't get to call someone cold until you've tried warmth. You don't get to call someone disrespectful until you've tried boundaries. You don't get to call yourself awkward until you've tried breathing and slowing down. In 5 seconds, you can't know everything about a person, but you can know what to do next. That's the skill, not mind reading, next step reading. When you meet someone, the first 5 seconds should answer 3 internal directives. Do I need to create safety here? Do I need to create structure here? Do I need to create energy here? Safety is warmth, patience, and relaxed presence. Structure is clear language, boundaries, and direction. Energy is enthusiasm, movement, and momentum. Different people need different blends depending on their state. And you can learn to deliver that blend quickly, without forcing it, without performing. Now, the last piece of this chapter is about your own presence, because you cannot read anyone cleanly if you are broadcasting chaos. People feel you before they understand you. Your breath, your tempo, your eyes, your posture, your voice. These are signals. They either settle the interaction or scramble it, so adopt a ritual. A simple one. Before entering any important interaction, take one breath that you can feel in your lower ribs. Drop your shoulders. Let your face soften. Not into a smile, not into fake friendliness, just into neutrality. Then choose one intention. Be clear, be calm, be curious. One intention, not 10. This takes 5 seconds, and it changes how people read you. Because here's the truth. The best readers are also the best signals. They don't just interpret, they influence. not through manipulation but through steadiness. As this chapter closes, let the idea sink in. You are not trying to become psychic. You are becoming present. You are building the discipline to notice without assuming, to respond without reacting, to stay powerful without becoming hard. And if you're willing to be honest with yourself, consider what's been running your 5 seconds so far. When you meet someone, what story do you immediately tell yourself about them? And what story do you immediately tell yourself about you? What patterns from your past are you still projecting onto new faces? What would change in your relationships, your work, and your confidence if you replaced instant judgment with instant observation and replaced fear with a deliberate next step? Chapter 2. Baselines and breaks. In the first 5 seconds, you learn to stop writing a novel and start collecting clean data. You learn to notice pace, openness, and focus, and to separate what you see from the story you're tempted to tell. You also learn that the goal isn't to guess someone's entire personality, but to choose the right next step, create safety, create structure, or create energy. Now we sharpen the blade. Because even a disciplined snapshot can still mislead you if you don't understand one brutal truth about people. The same behavior can mean completely different things depending on the person. Arms crossed might mean defensiveness, or it might mean comfort. Silence might mean disapproval, or it might mean deep thinking. Fast speech might mean confidence, or it might mean anxiety. Without context, you're still guessing. That's where baselines and breaks come in. A baseline is how someone naturally is when they're not under pressure, not performing, not defending, not trying to impress. A break is a deviation from that baseline. Reading people quickly isn't about memorizing a list of tells. It's about spotting what changes. Think of it like driving at night. You don't need to know every detail of the road. You just need to see when something shifts in the lane. Your eyes catch movement, not perfection. Human behavior works the same way. Most meaningful information is not the behavior itself, but the moment the behavior changes. There was a negotiation trainer who used to bring 2 volunteers on stage. He'd ask the first person to stand comfortably and talk about something neutral like their morning routine. He'd watch their breathing, their hand movements, their eye contact, their tempo. That's baseline. Then he'd ask a single question that introduced mild pressure. Tell me about a time you failed. Within seconds, something changed. Maybe the voice got quieter. Maybe the shoulders rose. Maybe the eyes broke away. Maybe the breath climbed up into the chest. That change was the break. The audience always leaned in because everyone felt it. And that's your advantage. You don't need supernatural perception. You need training to notice what your nervous system already detects, but you have to do it cleanly without ego. Here's the mistake people make. They meet someone, see one signal, and decide what it means. That's lazy. That's how you confuse reading people with judging them. The disciplined approach is different. You treat your first impression as a hypothesis. Then you gather a baseline quickly and you watch for breaks. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. A woman named Sana was leading a cross-functional team with a colleague named Rohit. In their first interaction, Rohit sounded sharp. He interrupted. He spoke fast. He barely smiled. Sana labeled him as aggressive within 5 seconds and started guarding herself. She became formal, cautious, and slightly cold, thinking she was protecting her position. Over the next 2 weeks, tension grew. Then something happened that changed her read. One afternoon, Sana saw Rohit outside the meeting room talking with an intern. His posture was relaxed. His voice was warm. He was patient, explaining something slowly, even laughing. Sana noticed the contrast. That was the baseline she had never bothered to collect. In the meetings, Rohit wasn't aggressive. He was pressured. He had a deadline hanging over him, and meetings made him feel trapped because they threatened his time. Once Sana recognized that, she stopped trying to win against him and started creating structure. She opened meetings with a clear agenda and time limits. She asked for decisions early. She summarized next steps in one sentence. Rohit's interruptions dropped. His tone softened. The conflict wasn't personal. It was environmental. That is power. Not because Sana figured him out, but because she responded to the real cause instead of reacting to the surface. So how do you build a baseline fast, especially if you only have minutes or you're meeting someone for the first time? You use neutral prompts and watch the body. When you want baseline, keep the topic neutral and low stakes for a moment. Ask about their day, how they found the venue, how their week has been, something that doesn't threaten status. As they answer, your job is not to entertain yourself. Your job is to calibrate. Notice their natural tempo. Do they pause before responding, or do they fire back quickly? Notice their natural eye behavior. Do they hold steady contact, or do they glance away while thinking? Notice their natural movement. Are they expressive with hands or still? Notice their natural voice. Is it loud or soft, sharp or rounded? Then and only then introduce a mild pressure point that matters to the interaction. Not an interrogation, just a relevant question. In a work setting, it might be, what's the biggest risk you're watching right now? In a personal setting, it might be, what's been on your mind lately? In a sales setting, it might be, what would need to be true for this to feel like the right decision? Now watch for breaks. Not one break, a cluster. A single blink means nothing. A single throat clear means nothing. People itch, people blink, people shift. But a cluster of changes right after a specific topic is information. If their baseline is open and fluid and suddenly they become still, breathe shallow and answer vaguely, that's a break. If their baseline is slow and thoughtful and suddenly they speed up and start justifying, that's a break. If their baseline is confident and suddenly they laugh at the wrong moment and look away, that's a break. Again, breaks don't mean lying. Breaks mean load. Load can be anxiety, excitement, fear, uncertainty, embarrassment, or the effort of choosing words carefully. Your job is not to accuse, your job is to adjust. There's a metaphor that will stick with you. Imagine you're holding a glass of water. When you're steady, the water doesn't move. When something shakes you, the water sloshes. The slosh doesn't tell you what you're feeling. It tells you you're affected. That's what breaks are, sloshes. Now here's where discipline comes in. When you notice a break, you have three professional options. You create safety, you create structure, or you create space. Creating safety sounds like, no rush, take your time, and then you actually give time. It sounds like, we don't have to decide right now, if you mean it. It looks like softer eye contact and a slower pace. Safety invites honesty because it lowers the cost of being real. Creating structure sounds like, let's define what we mean, or here are the options as I see them, or what would make this easier. Structure helps when someone is overwhelmed or defensive because clarity reduces emotional noise. Creating space is sometimes the most powerful move. It sounds like, let's pause and come back to this, or think about it and tell me tomorrow. Space helps when pressure is causing distortion. Many people reveal the truth once they're no longer trying to survive the moment. But none of these options work if your own body is chaotic. If you're tense, hungry for approval or desperate to be liked, you'll misread breaks as rejection. So bring back the ritual from the first chapter. One grounded breath, relaxed shoulders, neutral face, one intention. Without that, your perception is polluted. Let's take this into a tougher real-world example. A disagreement with someone you care about. A man named Dev used to fight with his partner about small things that became big things. One night she said, "It's fine," in a flat tone and walked away. Dev's instinct screamed, "She's done with me." In 5 seconds his body flooded with panic. He followed her, talking fast, demanding clarity, trying to fix it immediately. That pressure made her shut down more. The cycle repeated. Then Dev tried a different approach. The next time he heard "it's fine," he did the only mature thing in that moment. He slowed down. He remembered baseline. When she was truly fine, her voice had warmth, even when she was quiet. When she wasn't fine, her shoulders rose and her words became minimal. He noticed the break, and instead of pushing, he created safety and space. He said, "I can tell something shifted. I'm here. We can talk when you're ready." Then he stopped talking. He didn't punish her with silence. He didn't chase her with panic. He stayed present. 30 minutes later, she came back and talked. Not because he had the perfect words, but because he didn't turn her break into a threat. He read the moment correctly. This wasn't a fight to win. It was a nervous system to calm. Baselines and breaks will also protect you from being manipulated, but not in the dramatic way people fantasize about. The protection is quieter. It comes from refusing to be rushed by someone else's urgency. It comes from noticing when charm appears only when you set a boundary. It comes from noticing when respect disappears the moment you ask for clarity. Those are breaks too. A client once told a consultant, "We love your work, you're exactly what we need," with big smiles and quick praise, baseline warmth. Then the consultant asked for a contract in writing. The warmth vanished, the tone turned sharp, and the client started guilt-tripping. "Don't you trust us?" That break was the message. The consultant didn't argue. He stayed calm and structured. "I trust the process." Written terms protect both sides. The client either complies or leaves. Either way, you stay safe. This is what disciplined reading does. It doesn't make you paranoid, it makes you steady. So here's your practice for this chapter, and it's simple enough to do without thinking too hard. In every meaningful interaction this week, spend the first minute collecting baseline. Neutral topic. Calm body. Observe pace, openness, focus, and natural style. Then introduce one relevant question that adds mild load and watch for breaks. Not to judge. To choose your next move, safety, structure, or space. If you do this consistently, you'll start seeing patterns you missed your whole life. You'll realize who becomes clearer when you slow down. You'll realize who becomes evasive when you ask for specifics. You'll realize who relaxes when you set boundaries. You'll realize who only respects you when you respect yourself. And you'll realize something else, something even more important. You'll see your own breaks. You'll notice when you speed up to impress. You'll notice when you get quiet to avoid conflict. You'll notice when you smile to cover discomfort. That awareness will change your relationships faster than any clever technique, because you'll stop leaking signals you don't mean to send. As you close this chapter in your mind, sit with the implications. Who in your life have you labeled without ever collecting a baseline? Where have you interpreted a break as an insult instead of information? In your next conversation, what would it look like to hold your first impression lightly, to test it with a neutral minute, and to respond with safety, structure, or space instead of reflex. And when you feel your own body tighten in those first moments, what would change if you named the sensation, took one grounded breath, and chose your next step on purpose? If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Chapter 3. Listen for the unsaid. So far, you've trained yourself to stop guessing and start observing, and you've learned to build a baseline before you trust any conclusion. You've also learned to watch for breaks, not as proof of anything, but as a signal that something carries load. Now we go deeper, because the fastest way to read anyone isn't what you see. It's what you hear, especially what they never say out loud. Most people listen to words like they're a final answer. Disciplined people listen to words like they're a doorway. The doorway leads to values, fears, needs, and priorities, and those are the real drivers of behavior. If you can hear what's unsaid, you can predict what comes next. Not perfectly, not magically, but accurately enough to move with confidence. Here's the hard truth. Words are the part people practice. They rehearse what they want to sound like. They polish their explanations. They hide behind jokes. They use professional language to avoid vulnerability. But there are always leaks. Not in a dramatic, got-you way, in a quiet, consistent way. A person reveals themselves through what they emphasize, what they avoid, and what they repeat. A director named Kavya used to interview candidates for leadership roles. She stopped being impressed by perfect answers a long time ago. One day, a candidate walked in with a confident smile and spoke like a textbook. Every answer was clean, too clean. I'm passionate about collaboration. I thrive in dynamic environments. I'm committed to continuous improvement. Kavya heard the words, but she listened to what wasn't there. There were no examples with real friction, no moment of doubt, no specific trade-off, no ownership of a hard decision. So she asked one question calmly, without accusation. Tell me about a time you disappointed someone you respected. The candidate's eyes held for a moment, then broke away. The voice got slightly higher. The pace increased. The candidate started talking about learning moments without naming the mistake. Kavya didn't label it as deceit. She labeled it as avoidance. The break wasn't the point. The pattern was the point. The pattern said, when status is threatened, this person protects image first. Kavya hired someone else. Not because the candidate was a bad person, but because that role required someone who could stay honest under load. That's reading. You're not hunting lies. You're identifying priorities. To read anyone quickly, you need to tune into 3 listening channels. The first channel is precision. People who are confident in the truth tend to be more concrete. People who are trying to manage perception tend to be more abstract. This doesn't mean concrete equals honest and abstract equals dishonest. It means abstract often equals protected. Listen for nouns versus fog. We improved retention by 8% after simplifying onboarding and changing the first week check-ins. That's precision. We did a lot of initiatives to improve engagement. That's fog. Listen for time and place. Last quarter during the rollout, I missed a dependency. Time and place. That's a person who can face reality. At some point there were challenges. That's a person who doesn't want to be pinned down. The second channel is ownership. People reveal themselves by how they distribute responsibility. Some people say I when things go well and we when things go wrong. Some people do the opposite. Some people never say I at all. Some people say they constantly, even when talking about their own life. Ownership isn't about blame, it's about agency. If someone speaks like life is happening to them, they'll likely keep living that way. If someone speaks like they make choices, they'll likely keep making them. The third channel is emotional vocabulary. This is the most underused tool, and it's one of the fastest. When people lack language for feelings, they act out feelings. When they have language, they can process instead of exploding, withdrawing, or manipulating. Listen to how someone describes pressure. Do they say, I get focused, or I get anxious, or I get irritated, or I shut down? That single sentence tells you how they respond when things matter. It tells you how to approach them. It tells you how they may treat you when life gets heavy. Now here's where most listeners fail. They take these channels and turn them into a scorecard. That makes them rigid and wrong. Your job is not to grade people. Your job is to find the simplest true thing you can act on. So you listen for the need underneath the speech. A person who repeats details may not be trying to bore you. They may be seeking certainty. A person who speaks loudly may not be arrogant. They may be trying to establish safety through control. A person who jokes constantly may not be carefree. They may be avoiding discomfort. A person who asks a lot of questions may not be challenging you. They may be trying to reduce risk. Let me give you an example that will change how you handle difficult conversations. A manager named Ritesh had an employee, Lena, who always pushed back in meetings. Every proposal, she found a flaw. Every plan, she saw a risk. Ritesh labeled her as negative and stopped inviting her into early discussions. Then he was surprised when she became even more resistant later, when decisions were already made. One evening, Ritesh stayed after work and watched how Lena interacted with a new team member who was confused about a process. Lena was patient, thorough, even protective. Ritesh realized he had misread her. He decided to listen differently. In their next one-on-one, he didn't argue. He asked a simple question. When you challenge ideas in meetings, what are you trying to protect? Lena didn't answer right away. Then she said, I'm trying to protect customers from chaos. I've seen what happens when we move fast without thinking. That was the unsaid. She wasn't negative. She was loyal to stability. Her value was reliability. Her fear was fallout. Ritesh adjusted his approach. He didn't tell her to stop challenging. He gave her a role. Before we finalize any plan, I want your risk scan. Give it to me in writing with your top concerns and your suggested fixes. Lena's energy changed. She became constructive because her need was being met. Her warnings were being honored. The friction became a resource. That's what reading creates, not cleverness, alignment. Now let's get sharper with a tool you can use in the first 5 seconds of a conversation, and it's not visual, it's auditory, it's cadence. Cadence is the rhythm of someone's speech. When people are comfortable, cadence is natural. When they're under load, cadence changes. They may rush. They may stall. They may speak in longer sentences to hold control. They may use shorter sentences to avoid exposure. They may fill silence with extra words because silence feels dangerous to them. Your discipline is to notice cadence and then use it. You either match to build trust or you contrast to lead the room. Matching is simple. If someone speaks slowly, you slow down. If someone speaks quickly, you slightly increase pace but not to panic speed. Matching tells their nervous system, you're safe with me. It reduces friction. Contrasting is leadership. If the room is frantic, you slow your voice and become clear. If the room is sluggish, you bring energy and direction. Contrasting isn't overpowering, it's regulating. There's a reason this works. People don't just exchange information, they synchronize. Every conversation is a subtle negotiation of tempo. If you control tempo, you control clarity. But there's one more listening skill that separates amateurs from disciplined readers: silence. Most people fear silence. They rush to fill it. They answer their own questions. They soften their own boundaries. They talk themselves out of respect. Silence is where truth shows up if you're strong enough to hold it. A consultant named Farah was pitching a proposal to a client. She explained it clearly, then asked, "Does this fit what you're looking for?" The client smiled and said, "Sounds good," but his voice was flat. Farah noticed the mismatch, but she didn't pounce. She didn't keep selling. She stayed calm and used silence. She held eye contact softly and waited. 5 seconds passed. 10 seconds. The client shifted. Then he said, "My concern is the timeline. I don't want a messy transition." That was the real objection, and it came out because Farah didn't drown it with persuasion. She let the silence do the work. Silence is not awkwardness. Silence is pressure. When you hold it without anxiety, you invite the other person to reveal what they were protecting. Here's the practical habit that will change your conversations immediately. When you ask a meaningful question, don't add a second sentence. Don't justify it. Don't rescue them. Ask, then stop. If you do this, you'll start hearing the truth that's been hiding behind polite words. You'll hear the hesitation before the yes. You'll hear the forced enthusiasm. You'll hear the relief when you create safety. You'll hear the anger when you touch a boundary. You'll hear the sadness when you acknowledge a loss. And you'll learn how to respond without escalating. Now, a warning that keeps you ethical and effective. Do not weaponize what you hear. The moment you use someone's vulnerability as leverage, you lose the skill, because people are not puzzles. They are nervous systems with histories. The goal is clarity and connection with self-respect, not control. So here's how you stay grounded. When you notice a break in speech, you don't diagnose. You reflect. You say, "I notice you paused there," or "I hear some hesitation," or "it sounds like this matters." Reflection is gentle and precise. It invites truth without forcing it. And if they deny it, you don't argue, you simply stay steady. Your job is to create conditions where honesty can exist. As you carry this chapter into the real world, ask yourself what kind of listener you've been. Do you listen to reply, or do you listen to understand? Do you chase smooth answers, or do you value specific ones? Do you fear silence, or can you hold it long enough for truth to surface? When someone speaks, do you only hear their words, or do you hear their need underneath? The value they're protecting, the fear they're avoiding, the agency they're either claiming or surrendering. And in your next conversation, what would change if you stopped trying to be impressive and started trying to be precise, calm, and present? If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Chapter 4. The context that controls the person. You've trained your eyes to collect clean data without rushing into a label, and you've learned to build a baseline so you don't confuse one moment with someone's whole identity. You've trained your ears to hear what's unsaid, to notice cadence, and to let silence pull the truth into the open. Now you're going to add the missing piece most people never learn, the piece that makes your reads accurate instead of dramatic: context. People don't behave the same in every environment. They behave according to stakes. They behave according to roles. They behave according to what they think is at risk and what they think is possible. If you ignore context, you will misread good people as hostile, misread anxious people as dishonest, and misread confident people as dangerous. Context is the invisible hand that shapes posture, tone, pace, and even the words someone chooses. Here's the simple law: behavior is often a strategy, not a personality. A man named Nikhil used to complain that his sister was two-faced. At home, she was loud, playful, and teasing. At family gatherings, she was polite, measured, and distant. Nikhil took it personally. He assumed she was ashamed of him or embarrassed by their family. One night he finally confronted her and she surprised him with the truth. "I'm not two-faced, I'm managing pressure. At home, I'm safe. In gatherings, I'm on display. If I relax, someone comments. If I speak too freely, someone twists it. I'm not hiding from you, I'm protecting myself." That was context. Same person, different arena, different risk. Once you see this, you stop asking, "What kind of person is this?" And you start asking, "What kind of situation is this?" When you can answer that in 5 seconds, you stop getting fooled by surface signals. There are 3 context questions you can run instantly, almost like a mental reflex. They don't require deep analysis and they don't turn you into a skeptic. They make you accurate. The first question is, what are the stakes right now? Stakes are what someone believes they could gain or lose in this moment. Status, money, approval, control, safety, time. If the stakes are high, people compress, they tighten, they choose words carefully. If the stakes are low, people loosen, they reveal more, they take more social risks. A confident person under high stakes may sound guarded. A warm person under high stakes may sound cold. A relaxed person under high stakes may become rigid. If you judge them for that, you'll miss the truth. The truth is not they changed. The truth is the stakes changed. The second question is, who has power here and how does the person relate to it? Power isn't always formal. Sometimes it's the loudest person in the room. Sometimes it's the one who controls access. Sometimes it's the one who sets the tone. People act different around power. Some become compliant. Some become performative. Some become combative. Some become invisible. That reaction is a major clue, not about their worth, but about their coping strategy. The third question is, what role is this person playing right now? We all play roles: professional, parent, friend, leader, newcomer, expert, outsider. When someone is locked into a role, they may suppress parts of themselves to maintain it. If you don't see the role, you'll blame them for being inauthentic when they're simply managing expectations. A story will make this real. A founder named Aisha hired a new operations head, Sanjay. In their first meeting, Sanjay was confident, almost too direct. He asked sharp questions. He challenged assumptions. Aisha's first instinct was to see threat, but she did something disciplined. She read the context. The stakes were high because the company was scaling and Aisha had hired him specifically to protect execution. His role was to create structure under pressure. In that context, directness wasn't disrespect, it was service. So Aisha didn't react emotionally. She responded strategically. She said, "Good, keep that standard. Just tell me when you need a decision and when you need debate." Sanjay's tone softened instantly. He wasn't trying to dominate. He was trying to do the job he thought she wanted. Now reverse the context and watch how behavior changes. The same Sanjay later at a team dinner became quiet. He listened more than he spoke. He smiled but didn't lead the conversation. Someone could misread that as arrogance or distance. But the context was social bonding, not problem solving. His role shifted. He didn't want to control the room. He wanted to observe, different arena, different output. This is why context is your correction lens. Here's the practical method: triangulation. You never trust a single signal. You triangulate 3 points quickly. You look at the environment. You listen to the words. You notice the body. When 2 of these points agree, you can act. When they conflict, you slow down and gather more baseline. If someone's words are warm but the body is tight and the context is high stakes, you don't accuse. You create safety or structure and see what happens. If someone's body is relaxed, the words are vague, and the context is low stakes, you don't overthink. You keep it simple. If someone's words are confident, the body is restless, and the context is a power-heavy situation, you consider performance. Not in a cynical way, in a realistic way. Let me show you how this helps you avoid a common trap: mistaking nerves for deception. A woman named Tara was interviewing for a role she wanted badly. The interviewer, Rohan, had studied body language online and believed he could spot lies. Tara's hands fidgeted. Her voice shook slightly. She took a second too long to answer. Rohan decided she was hiding something. But the context was obvious: high stakes, unfamiliar environment, authority across the table, and a person who cared deeply. Tara's nervous system was loud because the moment mattered. That doesn't equal dishonesty. That equals arousal. Rohan almost missed a great hire because he didn't read context. When he finally asked for specific examples and gave Tara a moment to breathe, her clarity returned. The fidgeting didn't disappear, but the substance came through. She wasn't deceptive, she was invested. This is where your discipline becomes compassion with standards. You can hold both. You can be understanding about anxiety without lowering the bar for clarity. You create conditions where the best of someone can show up, then you evaluate what shows up. Context also protects you from false warmth. Some environments teach people to smile as a shield: customer service, networking events, social hierarchies. A person can be polite and still be unsafe. A person can be charming and still have weak character. Context matters because it tells you whether the warmth is voluntary or required. A man named Omar met a potential business partner who seemed incredibly friendly. Compliments, jokes, easy confidence. Omar felt the pull of being liked. Then he did what disciplined people do. He tested context. He introduced a small boundary, not a fight, just a line. Before we move forward, I need everything in writing, and I need a clear timeline. The other man's expression stayed pleasant, but the tone cooled. He started pushing urgency. Trust me, we don't need to complicate it. Omar didn't argue, he simply held the boundary. The friendliness turned into subtle pressure, then irritation. That break only appeared after the boundary. Context revealed the truth. The warmth was conditional. It wasn't connection. It was leverage. This is not about being suspicious of everyone. It's about being honest about how situations shape behavior. Now, add one more skill that makes context reading almost automatic: identify the currency. Every environment has a currency that people trade. In some rooms, the currency is competence. In some rooms, it's likability. In some rooms, it's loyalty. In some rooms, it's dominance. People adapt to the currency because they want acceptance or influence. If you can identify the currency, you can predict behavior. In a room where competence is currency, people speak in specifics and challenge ideas. In a room where likability is currency, people soften and avoid conflict. In a room where dominance is currency, people interrupt and posture. In a room where loyalty is currency, people agree publicly and criticize privately. Your job is not to become part of the worst version of the currency. Your job is to see it, then choose your stance. You can still be warm in a competence room, but you'll need clarity. You can still be clear in a likability room, but you'll need tact. You can still be calm in a dominance room, but you'll need boundaries. You can still be honest in a loyalty room, but you'll need courage. When you enter a space, ask yourself, what gets rewarded here? That single question makes you harder to manipulate and easier to respect. Here's your practice for this chapter. Before any meaningful conversation, take 5 seconds to name the context. High stakes or low stakes, power heavy or power balanced, role pressure or role freedom. Then choose how you'll respond. Safety, structure, or space, depending on what the moment demands. And during the conversation, watch for one key indicator that you're reading context correctly. Does the person relax when you adjust? If you slow down and they soften, your read was accurate. If you add structure and they become clearer, your read was accurate. If you give space and they return with honesty, your read was accurate. The proof is not in your theory. The proof is in the result. If you want to take this even deeper, start noticing where you change to. In what environments do you become performative? In what environments do you become quiet? Where do you over-explain? Where do you become sharp? Those are your context triggers. When you master them, you stop being dragged around by rooms. You become consistent, and consistent people are trusted. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. So as you walk into the next room, the next meeting, the next conversation, don't just stare at the person. Read the arena. What are the stakes they feel, even if they never say them? What power are they navigating, even if it's invisible? What role are they trying to protect, and what currency are they trying to spend? And when you notice yourself tightening or performing, what would happen if you named the context, took one grounded breath, and chose your response with discipline instead of reflex? Chapter 5. The calibration advantage. You've learned to stop turning first impressions into fixed labels, and you've trained yourself to build baselines so you can notice breaks without jumping to conclusions. You've learned to listen for what's unsaid, to use silence, and to read the arena by spotting stakes, power, roles, and the currency people trade. Now we take the next step, because reading people quickly is only half the skill. The other half is what you do with the read. Most people treat perception like a scoreboard. They notice something and decide what it means, then they either chase approval or brace for impact. Disciplined people do something different. They calibrate. Calibration means you make a small move, you watch the response, and you adjust. It's how pilots fly through turbulence. It's how surgeons work with precision. It's how great communicators handle difficult humans without becoming difficult themselves. The simplest way to understand calibration is this. You don't need to be certain, you need to be responsive. You walk into a room and your snapshot says the person is fast, closed, and focused elsewhere. That is not a verdict, it's a starting point. Your next move is a controlled experiment. You slow down a fraction. You soften your tone, you offer structure. Then you watch what changes. If they relax, you were close. If they tighten, you adjust again. This is how you become accurate without pretending to be psychic. A man named Samir used to freeze in high-pressure conversations. When his boss asked for updates, he would ramble. When clients asked hard questions, he would over-explain. His brain was always trying to prevent rejection by providing more information. The result was the opposite. People lost trust because he sounded unsure. One day, Samir watched a senior colleague handle a tense client call. The client was impatient, speaking fast, cutting sentences short. Samir assumed the senior colleague would match the speed and fight for control. Instead, the senior colleague did something calm and surgical. He slowed his voice. He spoke in shorter sentences. He asked one clarifying question, then stopped. The client, who had been rushed and sharp, gradually slowed down too. Not because the senior colleague dominated him, but because the senior colleague regulated the tempo. That's calibration. You don't argue with chaos. You set a new pace and invite the other nervous system to match. Here's the calibration advantage. You can influence people without trying to control them. There are 3 moves that make calibration work, and you can do them in seconds. The first move is pace control. Pace is the steering wheel of conversation. Fast pace increases emotion and reduces accuracy. Slow pace reduces emotion and increases clarity. You don't need to become slow and sleepy. You need to become deliberate. When someone is anxious, your pace can calm them. When someone is evasive, your pace can hold them in place long enough to reveal substance. When someone is aggressive, your pace can remove the fuel. Aggression feeds on reaction. Calm starves it. The second move is reflection. Reflection is how you show you're hearing what matters without agreeing or surrendering. It's not flattery, it's precision. A reflection sounds like, it sounds like the timeline is your main concern, or I'm hearing that reliability matters more than speed, or it seems like you don't want to commit without more certainty. Reflection pulls the real topic into the center. People feel seen, and when they feel seen, they stop performing as much. The third move is the clean question. The clean question is one sentence, neutral, direct, and it creates either clarity or truth. It doesn't push. It doesn't accuse. It doesn't beg. It simply forces the mind to choose. A clean question sounds like, what would make this a yes? Or what's the risk you're trying to avoid? Or what do you need from me right now? Or what's the real constraint? Clean questions are powerful because they respect the person while refusing fog. Now you might be thinking, what if the person is manipulating? What if they're difficult? What if they're trying to throw me off? Calibration still works, but you need one extra ingredient: boundaries that don't come with anger. Most people think boundaries are a fight. They're not. A boundary is a standard you hold calmly. The calmer you hold it, the more it reveals about the other person. Some people respect it immediately. Some negotiate respectfully. Some push with pressure. Some punish with withdrawal. That reaction is information, and you didn't have to accuse anyone to get it. A woman named Lena ran a small design studio. A new client came in charming and enthusiastic, praising her work, talking big about future projects. Then the client asked for a quick sample, then a slightly bigger sample, then just one more revision, all before signing anything. Lena's old self would have complied, hoping to earn trust. Her new self calibrated. She reflected first. It sounds like you want to feel certain before committing. The client agreed quickly. Then Lena asked a clean question. Are you ready to move forward with a deposit today if we agree on scope? The client hesitated, smiled, and tried to keep the conversation warm while avoiding the commitment. Lena didn't argue. She set a boundary with structure. I can start once the deposit is in. Until then, I'm happy to answer questions. The charm turned into mild irritation, then guilt. Come on, don't you want to build a relationship? Lena stayed steady. I do, and this is how I protect the relationship. Clear agreements. The outcome didn't matter as much as the clarity. Calibration exposed the client's real pattern. They wanted value without commitment. Lena didn't need to insult them. She just needed to hold a line. Here's the deeper principle behind all of this. People test where you stand. Not always consciously, not always maliciously. They test with tone, urgency, vagueness, emotional pressure, or silence. Your response teaches them how to treat you. If you rush when they rush, you teach them urgency controls you. If you over-explain when they doubt you, you teach them doubt makes you leak confidence. If you collapse when they get cold, you teach them withdrawal controls you. If you get angry when they push, you teach them they can control you with provocation. Calibration is how you teach the opposite. You teach that you can stay warm without being weak, direct without being cruel, and open without being naive. Now let's make this even more practical with a story from a setting where reading and responding fast matters. A doctor named Dr. Iyer worked in a busy clinic. One afternoon, a patient came in visibly frustrated, speaking loudly, complaining about wait times, blaming staff. A younger doctor might have tried to defend the system or soothe with empty apologies. Dr. Iyer calibrated. First, pace control. He didn't match the loudness. He spoke slowly, firmly, with a grounded tone. Second, reflection. You've been waiting and it feels like nobody respected your time. The patient's shoulders dropped slightly. Third, a clean question. Do you want to solve the health issue today or do you want to talk about the experience first? That question did something powerful. It gave the patient control without giving up authority. The patient paused, then said, quieter, I want to solve it. I'm just tired. That was the truth. The anger was a cover for fatigue and fear. Dr. Iyer didn't get pulled into the cover. He guided the person to the center. Notice what happened. Dr. Iyer didn't win. He didn't dominate. He regulated the interaction, protected his own standards, and created safety for honesty. That's what disciplined reading is for. Now you also need calibration for moments when you misread, because you will misread. Everyone does. The difference is how fast you repair. If you sense you pushed too hard, you don't pretend. You soften and reset. Let me slow down. I want to understand this correctly. If you sense you were too soft and got vague answers, you don't get bitter, you add structure. Let S be specific. What decision are we making today? If you sense you assumed incorrectly, you don't defend your ego, you correct with humility. I may have misread that, help me understand. Repair is not weakness. Repair is mastery. It tells people you're grounded enough to prioritize truth over pride. So here's the practice that makes this chapter real. In your next important interaction, choose one calibration move before you enter. Decide to control pace, or decide to use one reflection, or decide to ask one clean question. Not all three. 1. Make it easy, then watch the effect. If the person relaxes, you keep going. If they resist, you don't panic, you adjust. If they become clearer, you lean into clarity. If they become foggier, you bring structure. If they become emotional, you create safety. If they become manipulative, you hold a boundary. Over time, you'll realize something liberating. You don't need to read people perfectly to handle them well. You need to stay steady and gather feedback. As you take this in, let your mind examine your own patterns. Where do you lose pace control and start rushing? Where do you avoid clean questions because you fear the answer? Where do you refuse to set a boundary because you want to be liked? Where do you confuse kindness with compliance? And if you started using calibration instead of guessing, what relationships would become calmer? What conversations would become clearer? And what parts of your life would stop feeling like a constant test you're failing? If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Chapter 6. Become the person who can read anyone. You've built the foundation piece by piece. Clean observation instead of instant labeling, baselines and breaks instead of guessing, listening for what's unsaid instead of trusting polished words, reading the arena through stakes and roles instead of blaming personality, and calibrating through pace, reflection, clean questions, and calm boundaries. Now the final chapter ties it all together because the highest level of reading people isn't a trick you use on others. It's who you become in every room. Here's the truth that finishes this audiobook. The fastest readers aren't the most suspicious people. They're the most stable people. When your nervous system is steady, you see clearly. When your nervous system is frantic, you hallucinate threats and meanings that aren't there. The skill you've been building is not just perception. It's self-mastery. You've been training your ability to stay present in the first 5 seconds, and that ability changes every part of your life. Most people walk into interactions hoping the other person will make it easy. They hope the other person will be warm, clear, respectful, and simple. That's fantasy. Real life is messy. People are tired. People are afraid. People are guarding reputation. People are protecting their pride. People are carrying old wounds into new conversations. If you need perfect conditions to be effective, you'll lose again and again. But if you become the person who can create conditions, you win. You create safety with your calm presence. You create structure with your clarity. You create energy with your intention. And you choose which one is needed based on what you observe, what you hear, what the context demands, and how the person responds when you calibrate. That is the entire system. See, hear, context, calibrate. Now let's take that system out of theory and place it into the moments where it matters most: conflict, opportunity, and intimacy. Conflict first. Conflict is where most people abandon discipline. They stop observing, stop listening, stop reading context, and stop calibrating. They go straight into defending their ego. They speak faster. They sharpen their tone. They interrupt. They try to win. And when you try to win, you lose the relationship, you lose information, and you lose yourself. Disciplined reading in conflict looks like this. You enter the conversation and you take the grounded breath you've been practicing. You drop your shoulders. You choose one intention: be clear, be calm, be curious. Then you run your snapshot: pace, openness, focus. You collect baseline if you can. You watch for breaks. You listen for precision, ownership, and emotional vocabulary. You read the stakes, the power, the roles, and the currency. And then you calibrate. If the person is heated, you control pace and speak in fewer words. If the person is vague, you use a clean question. If the person is defensive, you reflect what matters without surrendering your standard. If the person tries to rush you, you hold space and refuse urgency as a weapon. If the person becomes disrespectful, you set a boundary without anger. This is what strength looks like. Not aggression, not being unbothered. Strength is staying present without letting your emotions drive the steering wheel. Opportunity next. Opportunity often arrives disguised as uncertainty. A new client, a new role, a partnership, a first date, a first meeting with someone influential. In those moments, most people sabotage themselves by trying to be impressive. They overtalk, they overpromise, they mirror too much. They agree too quickly. They become flexible to the point of becoming fake. Reading people in opportunity means you stay rooted. You ask clean questions that reveal priorities. What matters most to you in this? What does success look like? What are you worried could go wrong? You listen for the unsaid, especially the value they're protecting. You watch for breaks when you mention timelines, money, commitment, or responsibility. You read the currency of the room, then you choose your stance without selling your self-respect. And then you calibrate your offer, not to manipulate but to align. When you align with what matters, you don't need to chase. Intimacy lasts. This is the deepest use of the skill. Reading people isn't just for boardrooms and negotiations. It's for love, friendship, family, and trust. And the standard here is higher. If you use these skills to win against someone you care about, you'll poison the bond. But if you use these skills to understand and respond with steadiness, you'll create the kind of connection most people never experience. In intimacy, what's unsaid is often the whole story. People don't say, "I'm afraid you'll leave." They say, "Do whatever you want." People don't say, "I feel unimportant." They say, "You're always busy." People don't say, "I'm overwhelmed." They say, "It's fine." Your job is not to interpret with paranoia. Your job is to respond with maturity. You reflect gently. It sounds like you're feeling alone in this. You ask clean questions. What do you need from me right now? You create safety and space. And when boundaries are needed, you set them cleanly. Love without boundaries becomes resentment. Boundaries without warmth become distance. The skill is holding both. Now, there's a final transformation you must make if you want this to stick. You must stop thinking of reading people as something you do and start thinking of it as a standard you live. Because your life will keep presenting the same tests until you become the kind of person who passes them. The test is always the same. Can you stay clear when you feel pressure? Can you stay calm when someone else is chaotic? Can you stay kind without becoming weak? Can you stay direct without becoming cruel? Can you hold silence without rushing to fix discomfort? Can you hold your boundary without needing the other person to approve of it? If you can do that, you can read anyone. Not because you've decoded them, but because you won't be thrown off by them. Let me give you one final story that brings the entire system together. A woman named Priya was offered a promotion that came with political complexity. Her new peer, a high-performing manager named Vikram, had a reputation for being intimidating. On her first day in the new role, Priya walked into a meeting and felt the temperature. Vikram's posture was closed. His tone was clipped. He asked pointed questions. If Priya had been living in old patterns, she would have done one of two things. She would have tried to impress him by over-explaining, or she would have fought him by becoming sharp. Instead, she applied the system. She observed without labeling. Fast pace, closed posture focused on outcomes. She remembered baseline and breaks were still unknown, so she didn't decide what he meant yet. She listened for the unsaid. His questions weren't random. They all circled risk and accountability. She read context. Stakes were high. The currency of the room was competence. Power was being negotiated. Vikram's role was protector of standards. Then she calibrated. She controlled pace and spoke slowly. She reflected. It sounds like reliability is non-negotiable for you. Vikram nodded once. She asked a clean question. What would you need to see in the next 30 days to trust that this transition is solid? Vikram paused. That pause mattered. The room softened. He wasn't used to being met with calm structure. He answered with specifics. Priya repeated the specifics back, clarified ownership, and ended with one sentence. I'll deliver that, and if I miss, I want you to tell me directly. Something shifted. Not because Priya dominated him, but because she made the interaction safe for clarity and firm for standards. Over the next month, Vikram became an ally. Now notice the deeper win. Priya didn't just read Vikram, she read herself. She didn't let her fear write a story. She didn't let her ego pick a fight. She stayed present. She became the calm person who can handle tension without turning it into drama. That's the person you are becoming. So let's lock it in with a final operating code you can carry into every interaction. When you enter a room, you don't enter to be liked. You enter to be effective. You don't enter to prove yourself. You enter to observe, listen, read context, and calibrate. You don't need to control the person. You need to control your response. And you do it in order. First, regulate yourself. One breath, shoulders down, neutral face. One intention. Second, snapshot the person. Pace, openness, focus. Third, establish baseline quickly if possible, then watch for breaks when topics add load. Fourth, listen for precision, ownership, and emotional vocabulary and let silence do its work. Fifth, read context, stakes, power, role, pressure, currency. Sixth, calibrate, pace, control, reflection, one clean question and boundaries without anger. That's it. Simple, not easy, but simple. And simplicity is what makes it repeatable. Now your final step is commitment, because skill without repetition is fantasy. You don't change because you understand. You change because you practice until it becomes identity. So decide right now that you will train this in everyday life. With cashiers, with colleagues, with friends, with family. In small moments, not just big ones. The small moments build the muscle. The big moments reveal it. And as you move forward, let these questions follow you like a quiet discipline. When you meet someone, what is the cleanest observation you can make without a story attached? What might be their baseline, and what might be a break caused by load? What are they not saying, and what value are they protecting underneath their words? What is the context shaping them right now, and what currency is this room rewarding? What is the smallest calibration you can make to create safety, structure, or energy without performing? And when you feel your own nervous system tightening, what would happen if you chose steadiness, asked one clean question, held one calm boundary, and became the person who can read anyone because you no longer need to fear them? If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this.